I'd say what? You probably have done a couple hundreds of rehabs by now?
I have my rehab card. I've got my rehab card. I managed to actually, last year I had 50% of the properties that I sold were properties that I sold retail. So I rehabbed 50%, and then inventory gets too high. I'll keep an eye on my inventory. I definitely, I can do multiple rehabs, obviously, at one time, but I don't like to have too many going, because it really takes my eye off the ball in other arenas, and I learned that the hard way. I also dabbled in the high-end market rehabbing. And I thought at one point, I thought that would be my calling because I do put out a nice product. I think that's very important. And I saw myself doing some very nice, multi-million dollar homes with a $1 million rehab, and it didn't go as planned. And when things go wrong in that environment, they go really wrong. And so I decided that wasn't for me. So there are different aspects of the rehabbing business that you can also choose to do. You can do a lighter rehab, and then of course a heavier rehab with your average retail value, and then the higher end rehab market. Different markets.
So from the smallest to largest, what budget? What was your budget of rehabs that you've done from the smallest to largest?
I can knock out a little bit of lipstick for about 18 to 20 on a smaller square foot home if we're just going to paint it, flooring, granite, things like that. Nowadays, it's a little harder for me to get it at that 20 mark. If we're doing, foundation, roof, etc., we're in a 40 to 50, ballpark. 35 to 50, let's say, if we're doing foundation, roof, things like that. And then I've put 120 into a rehab before, numerous times for 120. But I don't like to stay there. I do not like to. I will say that is. I need to be, the profit margin needs to be really, really good if I'm going to spend that much time on a rehab.
Yeah, 120 is a big budget. I remember I've done that on a flooded house one time, and I'll tell you what, it was not easy.
It's not easy, and where I end up spending the numerous times that I've done that big of a rehab, you're obviously that's all your regulars, your roof, your windows. It's a newer home. You're essentially building a newer home. We've removed walls, but I'll tell you what gets you is that concrete. You're doing a lot of these homes in, Westbury, for instance, and the vast majority of those driveways, of those detached garages, they all have the cracked concrete, and that will eat up easily 15 grand, easily of your budget. And I'd rather put that money into the home. So, things can get away from you pretty quickly if you're in that rehab. When we talk about a rehab that large, where things tend to get away from you when you're doing a rehab that large is the time, because now you're relying on many more trades than just your average $40,000 rehab. And you're having to do so many more things, and the time it takes to do that, you just have to consider that time that you're holding this and putting money out, that type of money, that's a big deal. So not only do you have a large number on your rehab, but you better factor in your holding costs as well, because they're going to be substantially higher, because it's a lot more difficult to do the 21-day rehab, which I've gone over with you guys before. You can't turn this one out in 21 days.
Okay, so you are in a very unique operations, your own operations. And because you also go on the by appointment, right? So you manage your rehab, your renovations, and you also go on the by appointment. Would you agree with me that the rehab, the budget, the planning starts at the by appointment?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about that secret sauce that you got. You there, you got an hour, you're trying to build rapport with the seller, and then you're trying to look at all the repairs so that you make sure you don't miss anything. What's your secret? How do you do it?
Well, I will say this. As far as my secret goes, I don't really get into, it's going to seem like I do from some of the things that I say, but I have I'll walk into a home, I'll know my numbers inside and out. I also know ballpark within $3,000 what it's going to cost me to do what I need to do to this home, just from kind of being there, right? But I want to strike that balance between letting the seller know that I'm aware of some of these things that are going to need replaced. They're going to need to be replaced or fixed, whatever the case. But we spend my time at an appointment, I would say 15% to 20% based on how the appointment's going on the house. So that's a very small percentage of time spent on the house. We don't start walking that property until I'm trying to figure out what it is they need from me. How can I best help them? And that takes a minute to get into because I've done a lot of rehabs. I don't need to use apps. I don't need to put repair numbers in. I don't need to count doorknobs. And if you're doing this in an appointment, you're not going to get that deal.
This episode is brought to you by Jet Lending. For over 20 years, Jet Lending has been helping real estate investors succeed. They offer 100% financing so you can be in at $0 at closing. I can always count on Jet Lending to fund my deals. If you're looking to fund your next deal, contact our friend over at jetlending.com.